Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you've had a chance to read the statement of the American Medical Association.
I have, Madam.
You have?
Yes.
So their concern is that in these challenging times where mainly small practices, solo practices, are trying to figure out ways to keep going, and the scrutiny on physician collaboration through network arrangements, their statement indicates that the FTC has put a very high bar on these kinds of arrangements to the point where most physicians are not able to avail themselves of these kinds of arrangements. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, Madam. I would disagree that we could debate what the high bar is. How high is the high bar? I think we've applied sensible standards, and I think to a degree that I would disagree with the very thoughtful people who put that statement together. I would disagree with their characterization of how carefully we have been reviewing and considering arguments about what kinds of integration of activity promote desirable marketplace consumer ends. We think we've been very attentive to arguments based on efficiencies, based on what the antitrust laws consider to be pro-competitive justifications, to arguments that would justify different types of collaboration. But let's suppose I'm wrong, and I don't think I am. We've also been engaged in a fairly intensive effort in recent years to re-examine those assumptions. We've had 2 workshops that deal directly with this issue within the past 12 months. We're engaged in continuing conversations with the AMA. So while I think there's enormous flexibility and sensitivity in our system to the assessment of these kinds of arguments, we are always inclined to reassess and to continue a discussion with not simply the industry, but with other interested groups to make sure we've got things right. And I look forward to continuing that discussion with the AMA, with other service providers, and with others who are expert in following developments in the sector.
The gentlelady, yield for a second. I would welcome your refreshing position about, reconsidering, because in the past, people have said that they were not wrong, and there were a lot of people who asked us to vote for the Iraq war based on weapons of mass destruction. Well, they were wrong. Maybe you're wrong. So I would like for you later on, before you leave, that you identify the member of your staff who will stay here to listen to the second panel.
I would say there'll be several of my colleagues who will be here to hear the second panel, although I would offer one thing that I asked the committee to think about. It's rare in the areas in which we enforce the responsibilities that you have given to us, that the people we sue, the mergers we seek to challenge, it is very rare for the parties in those transactions to say, my goodness, the FTC was right. They almost invariably say we're wrong. And if the suggestion by any industry group or group of parties that we are wrong were ever taken to be a certifying mark of the correctness of their position, we'd be out of business.
Well, given the track record in terms of enforcement and the number of cases, that's an open question.
I don't think for this agency it is, Madam. I say whether you're looking at numbers of cases, where you're looking at outcomes, having watched my agency for the past 3 decades, I stack it up happily against any other.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to continue. With regard to the physician collaboration, these kinds of arrangements, is FTC scrutiny based on Section 5 of the FTC Act or Section 7 of the Clayton Act?
We enforce both, Congresswoman.
With regard to these collaborations, because Section 7 has to do with mergers and acquisitions.
The framework in Section 7 also picks up contractual arrangements, what might be called joint ventures, that fall short of an actual combination of ownership. So we use both instruments. I would say the tendency over time has been for the analytical techniques used in both areas to converge, so that in many ways, with slight variations, we're asking the same basic questions about likely competitive harm, market power, and pro-competitive justifications.
So those are the major issues that, that you're concerned with these physician collaborations, because clearly they can't be engaging in any kind of a price-fixing activity. It's,
Generally speaking,
Right.
there's a breathtakingly serious prohibition against efforts by direct rivals to set prices.
yes, that's per se.
Yes, but there are qualifications to that, and our antitrust jurisprudence and our policy has recognized them. We recognize them, that there are instances in which restrictions, which, if they were standing on their own with nothing else, might very well put you in front of a grand jury and send you to prison, can be justified, and we take those justification arguments very seriously.
Well, having just read through the AMA testimony, it's a little difficult for me to understand how it is that a group of physicians who can't be, who have to compete on the basis of price and other ways, that somehow these kinds of arrangements would not pass scrutiny. It's sort of hard for me to understand.
But might we agree that if any group of service providers do nothing else but say, let's raise our rates,
This is for the second.
without anything else, that we would be very suspicious of those arrangements? So the real issue is there something else going on beyond just a decision to raise rates? That's really the issue about which we have a disagreement with the AMA, but it's also precisely the focal point of the continuing discussion that we look forward to having with them.
I think with the concern that we have on the high cost of healthcare, that any, reassessment on your part as to how you're going to enforce these kinds of arrangements, I think is a welcome statement.
And I do pledge us to engage in that discussion, which I would say has been a characteristic of our practice for decades. I'd reiterate that at the moment, yes, to the dismay of the AMA's statement, we think that we have things set in the right place, but we are neither arrogant nor stubborn to think that there's not always room to continue the discussion and reevaluate. When
Thank you.
facts and knowledge change, so do we.
I yield back, Madam Chair.
Ms. Clark?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Shabbat. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your insights today. I wanted to